Welcome. Welcome to this conversation with Boston College Alumni, Los Angeles. My name's Jeff Gallant, Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission, and on behalf of the entire office, congratulations, class of 2021. You managed to be incredibly successful high school students despite 2 years of really sacrifice and disruption. To the early decision students in the audience, you are a strong, compelling group that exceeded even our lofty expectations. And please know that we are thrilled to be your college choice. Thanks for joining us this evening. To the regular decision admitted students, congratulations. We're confident that Boston College is facing strong competition to enroll you. Our acceptance rate overall, so early decision and regular decision, fell just under 19%. So 18.9% to be exact, which highlights your success. And I hope you're able to enjoy the process of making your college decision, especially after all you've been through the past 2 years. But it just goes without saying, everyone, students, parents, loved ones, in this meeting should be extremely proud of what you've accomplished under less than ideal conditions. Thank you for the serious consideration you've given Boston College to be your college choice. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our featured speakers, and these panelists are certainly people we're excited to introduce you to. I think it'll be a very enjoyable use of your time. And I think we're going to go alphabetical order by first name, but we have a couple of BC alums here. So Ashley, do you mind getting us started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Rodriguez. I'm from the class of 2010. I'm originally from the Glendale, Pasadena area, grew up here, went to high school in LaSalle. Let's see, undergrad, I was a philosophy major, came back to LA, worked for a couple of years. I ended up going to law school at Loyola Law School out here in LA. I worked in corporate litigation for several years. I worked and clerked for the Ninth Circuit, Court of Appeal in Pasadena. Ultimately retired from my litigation career, so that's a fun story. And I'm still in the legal field, just in a non-litigator practicing role now. This is my husband. We met at BC, so that's always a fun story. Same year, same class, but it's so nice to be with you all. Congratulations.
That was awesome.
Thanks, babe.
So yeah, I'm her husband, Sandy Rodriguez, originally from the Bronx, New York, actually, and also same class, 2010, undergraduate degree was economics with communication focus. And honestly, I just moved right here following Ashley to California right after I graduated. I experienced enough of the winter in the East Coast and felt like I wanted to understand what a full year of sunshine really felt like. So I've been here since then.
It worked out.
It worked out. It worked out. And funny story, which we'll probably get into later, like how many BC couples actually come out of like BC, right? Which is, we're just part of the statistic now. But yeah, I work in the education nonprofit sector for the last 10 years. I'm doing a lot of work with LAUSD now currently, but I started working with the leadership development and scholarship program called the Posse Foundation, was with them for 7-8 years. And just worked with a lot of universities all over the country, sending students from LA to those schools. And recently just transitioned right before the pandemic to an organization called City Year, working with LAUSD, the LA Unified School District out here, and just supporting them, support students throughout this time. So it's been interesting work, especially obviously amidst the pandemic, but that's where I'm at now.
All right, I guess I'm next, right, Jeff? Okay, so I'm Christine Smith, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you guys. I made my decision actually to go to Boston College in one of these events, which was so funny. It was in Pasadena at, he wasn't even an alumni, he was a parent of alumni. And I was like, really? This is what you thought about BC? So I'm happy to be a part, so I'm from Los Angeles originally. I had never even seen snow before I went to Boston, so that was a little crazy. I grew up in the LA area, like Leimert Park, right off King Boulevard, not too far from USC. And I went to school in Santa Monica, though, at Crossroads, small private school. And I am class of 2006, so I'm like the elderly, I think, of this group. And so 2006, I was economics, film. So we share that, Sandy. But economics, film, interesting combo. No one understands it. I don't either, but it was fun. And then after graduation, I came right back home to LA. I worked in film and TV for a while. So I worked at Fox 21, NBC Universal for a little bit. I decided to start my own in post-production. So I started my own film editing business for a while, which I loved. I worked a lot in sports. I played basketball at Boston College. So I worked a lot with athletes, creating recruiting DVDs and everything. I had some internships at BC in financial services, though, exploring it. I thought I was going to be in sports and film forever. And ironically, now I've been in financial services for like 13 years now. So I flip-flopped. I have a very diverse background, but I'm a broker now with my own agency and agents and insurance and investments. And yeah, I love it. That's all about me. I will swing it over to Kelly now.
Hey everyone, Kelly Barnum, originally from Los Angeles, class of 2015, majored in finance and minored in philosophy. I went to Harvard Westlake. Right out of college, I went into an asset management firm called Putnam Investments, which was based in Boston. And now I work at a private equity firm in New York called Focus Financial. And I don't currently live and reside in New York, but in normal times, that is where I am. But I'm super excited to be on this panel with you guys. And biggest congrats. This has just been the strangest years. I can't even imagine what you all have been through as seniors, but huge congratulations from all of us.
Thanks, Kelly, Christine, Sandy, and Ashley. Christine, I'm 02 if it makes you feel any better. My first question, and I invite audience members to utilize the Q&A button that's at the bottom of the screen. You can add questions for our panel, but I'll begin with basically a return on investment question, but a broad question. Can you talk a little bit about just the impact that Boston College has made on you? Your professional career or your life, your personal qualities. And maybe we can begin with Kelly, but Sandy, Ashley, Christine, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. It's such a hard question. I think when you think about when you're picking a college, I played volleyball in college, so that was a driving force there, but it wasn't necessarily all about that. I walked onto campus, I met a lot of the people, and you can just get this feeling of BC just really produces great people. If you look at the Jesuit education and what kind of core classes you have to take, I never thought I would have minored in philosophy. And I came in as a CSUM undergrad. So I was going to go finance, marketing, accounting. I really didn't know. I knew I wanted to go business. And I took one class, perspectives, if you guys, the alumni, remember that class. Yeah. And my teacher, he took me for a spin because every single argument he made about every single philosopher made sense. And it was very complicated and confusing because there were all these different things you could study. And I ended up really being interested in how other cultures thought about life. And I think for me, that the academics and, that was my passion. I think a lot of, you guys can speak to this as well. A lot of people maybe go into art or into film. The liberal arts education just allows you to explore different parts of yourself that you didn't necessarily think you would go for in college. So, it's a huge supportive community around academics, and obviously there's big athletics fan here. So there's obviously great sports. Yeah. I would say that's kind of the number one impact when I think back is just, the way that I thought about academics and studied and changed the way I interacted with my classmates was just on a much deeper and much more interesting level for me. And then of course, you live in a 2-man to start, and then you kind of go up from there, and you can live with 6 to 8 people for the rest of your time there. And I can tell you today, all of those 8 people are still in my life, and I'm going to be a bridesmaid at one of their weddings, my roommate. I was paired with her randomly freshman year, and then we lived together since, and she was on the basketball team as well, Christine, and she's getting married in July. So of course, I think every school is going to tell you that the people are great, but there really is something different about BC, and it's just the nature of giving back and being a part of something that's bigger than you.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I'll kind of pick up where she left off. It is kind of a difficult question because so much of it is intangible, your return on investment. And, just to piggyback what Kelly was saying, it's the people. My best friends, I know this is common in college, but my best friends are people I went to BC with. But I would say that our friendships are so much more special, biasedly, than some of my other friends I know in other universities. And I think it is because of the broad range of things you have to study there. One of my teammates and best friends, communication, no way ever she thought she would be like philosophy major either, Kelly. And she was switching all up. And the conversations that we have, I mean, obviously sports was a big part of my development, but like Paul Benito, they're my professors. I'm really, really good friends with one of my sociology professors, which is crazy. I graduated forever ago and we still text each other, just checking in on each other. We know each other's families. I don't know that many people that have had that type of college experience. And it's really shaped me. And of course, there's things from a business career standpoint that are beneficial, but I think just me and how I've grown spiritually, relationships more than anything else was really developed and heightened at BC. So yeah, wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah.
Should we add anything else, Jeff? I don't know. They both did an amazing job.
No, let's ask another question. I'll start with both of you. Maybe just the transition from the West Coast to the East Coast, LA to Boston, or the Boston area to LA. And I think you come at it from different perspectives. I mean, Sandy, you highlighted at the beginning, right? If you make this decision to come to Boston, you're not signing up for the rest of your life, right? You can have the sunshine later on. But since both of you are coming at it from different vantage points, do you mind starting us off with that question? And then Christine and Kelly, please add to it.
So I was also a person who was not super fond of the very cold weather. I'm cold here in LA. Like I bring out, I get made fun of in LA, right?
She's wearing her coats when it's like 60 degrees. I'm like, what are you doing?
He'll just never understand. But so the weather was a real thing. It was an actual challenge for me. I didn't understand the concept of layering. I bought the fancy North Face parka, put it on, and I was like, this coat doesn't work. Like, why did I spend all this money on this coat? Like, it was a transition for me. And the idea of going out and being social when it was like 10 degrees outside, I just thought everyone was crazy. So I would say the first year, luckily I met, people like us, and we were friends for several years before we started dating. So friend and other East Coast folks that sort of pushed me outside my comfort zone in that respect. So otherwise, you transition, just buy the proper clothes, you'll be fine. But I think socially, that actually was a pretty big transition for me. Coming from LA, kind of smaller school environments, it was just easier for me to sort of blend in. I was a little bit on the more introverted side to begin with. So that was a transition. But I think the benefit of BC in a big liberal arts school that has a focus with the Jesuit, added on piece and just kind of community, all those things, is that there are so many different activities or groups or things that you can get involved in to kind of find your people, find where you fit in, find that kind of commonality. And that's actually how we probably got really close, is because we ended up joining this Latin dance team. So it's kind of a cultural tie and a dance tie for us. But that's where you kind of find your niche, right? So the first couple of weeks, to be perfectly frank, was a little lonely. I didn't know anyone there. I was also introverted, so it was kind of hard for me to connect with people in the beginning, but then you transition and then it becomes home and you can't wait to get back after summer, and your friends there become truly like your family. I know, Kelly, you mentioned everyone in our wedding party was either a family member or from BC, right? Roommates, friends, things like that. And so, like anything, it's a transition, but I think I was so grateful to have gone so far away from home, to be honest, because it challenged me in a very different way. It kind of, made me become an adult and learn how to make decisions that way. And I'm grateful for that.
I guess I can,
Yeah.
I'm not from LA, and I'll just add this because I worked with a lot of students who I sent to different parts of the country in general. And a lot of times talking to a lot of students from LA who would go to the Midwest and East Coast. The biggest thing one of the biggest transitions was when their roommates or their friends who are from the East Coast would go home for a weekend or would go home for like a smaller break, right? Folks from LA didn't have the same luxury at the end of the day, right? They just couldn't go to LA for a weekend. And maybe if you needed to, obviously you can, but it's just not as feasible, right? So I think those were the things. And again, like she said, you build a network, you build community. And I think Boston College does a great job at creating so many spaces that during breaks, during long weekends, there's things to do. Everything is still open and accessible for folks that aren't going home necessarily for that weekend.
Go to your friends' houses.
Go for friends'
That's what I did.
houses. You meet people, or if you've never been to like New York, you're now closer to New York, right? Or to all those other neighboring states and cities that you get to explore a lot more just because you got friends all over those parts of the city. So I'll add that just because I'm from New York, and I remember even Ashley coming to New York during one break, and some other friends who came to our places. So it was pretty cool. So yeah, I'll add that a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll jump in quickly. I'm definitely a California girl. I'm just gonna put it out there. And I was definitely that person who was saying, I am not taking my sandals off until it snows. So I had a couple other California friends that I had made when I started, and I'm sure Jeff can give you the stats, but it's one of the biggest states that ends up going to BC. So you're in the same boat with a lot of other people who don't love the cold, but it was the best thing for me. There are a lot of my friends who stayed in California and stayed in California for school, and that's what was best for them. But I have such a broader view of the US and just a lot of different things in my personality, just by being on the East Coast. And one of my favorite stories, I'll never forget, I went to visit BC for the first time, and I went into the Starbucks. And you're California, you're just chatty. Hey, how are you doing? What's up with your life? And the woman looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, ma'am, please move along. I called my mom and I said, Mom, they don't like me here. So everyone will have those experiences, and it's fun. And, meeting, like Sandy said, just a lot of people from Connecticut, from Maine, New Hampshire. Obviously, Massachusetts is probably the biggest feeder into BC. It's a really different culture than California, and it's the best time to push yourself.
Christine, is there anything you want to add before I introduce Justin?
Maybe just a couple things. I mean, I I to really mirror those sentiments. When it started snowing, I was like, I'm transferring. This is ridiculous. I was like, this is on a whole different level. So I'm gonna be transparent. It was like a little bit painful. Yeah. But I realized I didn't know. I thought I was so well-rounded in high school. Like, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't. I was like, I know people from everywhere and da 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 da. And in LA is such a diverse place until you leave. And I was like, I was in a bubble. LA really is a different world. And I was like, if you can live anywhere for 4 years, I can always go home, which I did. But I grew so much. And I know for a fact, because I had a lot of friends that went to UCLA and just stayed in California and stuff like that. Our experiences, how we see the world, how we can interact with people is so different because I was able to live that experience. That's the only thing I'll kind of add on to what everybody else did.
Thanks so much, Christine. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for joining us. You want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, happy to. And sorry, I'm more than a few minutes late. My name's Justin Pike. I graduated in 2011. Loved my BC experience. I actually made up my own major. I was one of those classic people who had no idea what they wanted to do and still kind of didn't sophomore year. But I was able to find a mentor and a professor who was in the American Studies minor program. And I loved every course I took through that minor and asked him how to make it a major. And we were able to do that together, which was really cool. I'm from Los Angeles, so I can appreciate the weather conversation very, very much so. And I went to Windward School, if any of you are from there or know it, or I think we're all of that ilk on the panel. So it's very nice to be here. Thank you again for indulging my tardiness, but eager to contribute.
Perfectly fine, Justin. It's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Maybe one reason that students are able to deal with the challenges that you just talked about is Boston. And then I think also too, people from LA or the West Coast want a coast, which we're able to offer. But how did you take advantage of the city of Boston as an undergraduate? How did the campus's close proximity to the city impact your college experience? Does anybody want to go first with that? Justin, thank you.
I'll jump right in. I mean, for me, I'm a history buff, so Boston held a special allure in history. I loved the fact that it was connected by transit. I mean, that's a completely new concept for anyone from LA and largely the West Coast, that you don't need a car. And as someone who now lives in Texas and just bought a car for the first time in a decade, I didn't miss it. And so, you know, the connectivity of Boston was really special for me personally. The history of Boston meant a lot. You know, it's very cool to be wandering around downtown and look up or look down and realize that you're in these momentous places in American history, which for me was tremendous. But, you know, the food is excellent. Access to culture is very, very good. There's also so many college students, which I really, I actually took for granted until I stayed for a couple summers at BC, and you realize that the city swells with college students. I think the population more than doubles when students are in session. And so you've got access to a great city easily with amazing things that you would expect from a city. It's very different than LA in that it's manageable. It is smaller. I often thought of Boston as more of a town than a city. That's not fair. I can tell Jeff is holding his breath as a native Massachusetts guy. But it's very manageable, and I really appreciated that as someone who didn't have a car or a ton of money going into college.
Can I say, I sort of loved being near the city, right? I loved being able to get on, the D line or the C line or whatever and make it out there for whatever event or activity was going on. But actually, I kind of swung the opposite way, and I didn't actually venture into the city all that much, just because BC and the campus provides so much of what you need and maybe what you want. And it's kind of its own little bubble. We talk about the BC bubble a lot when you're on campus, when you're out of campus, because unlike most universities, which I think contribute so much to your experience, is that the goal is to stay on campus all 4 years. Like, that's what people want. They're not trying to move off of campus. So even when I had initially 3 years of housing, ended up getting 4, but initially you go off your junior year so that you can be back on your senior year, which is something really unique, I think. And so I didn't feel the need to get into the city. There was just so much going on campus that it was there when I wanted it there, you know, but it was fun to kind of just be on campus and kind of a little removed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I won't add too much to this because I came from New York, and you know, the transit that Justin was talking about, it was nicer because it was cleaner. Boston was definitely cleaner than New York, that's for sure. And I appreciated just the history, like he was talking about. I think coming from New York, I was huge on sports, New York Yankee fan, and during the years that we were at BC, I mean, Boston and New York were just rivals, right? Yankee Boston, and even the Patriots and the Giants. Even though the Giants won, I was pretty happy there. But it was cool just being part of that culture and seeing the history behind Boston and the folks who are from there. They're really proud to be from Boston, from Massachusetts, and it's cool. I mean, I just appreciated the proximity as well, obviously, like Justin mentioned.
Yeah, and I'll just say one quick thing. Totally agree with Justin on the transit comment. I commuted 2 hours to high school. So, you know, being able to walk to class, obviously in your dorms is one thing, and then being able to access a city, you know, in half an hour was a really big draw for me. I do like cities. So I think when I was, you know, you guys and looking at other smaller schools, they just didn't appeal to me as much as, you know, you have the small school environment with 9,000 undergrads, and you still are able to access the city in 30 minutes instead of kind of being extremely remote in New Hampshire or in Maine somewhere where it's honestly hard for your parents and other friends to see you. So I think I had some friends that went to MIT, Harvard, BU, Northeastern, and I actually, you know, was able to take advantage of that in the summers and later on in college. And that was a really cool piece. It's just a really cool piece of Boston. As Jeff said, it's very young. There's a lot of college students.
Thanks, everyone. Another reason why students from, you know, as you highlighted, Kelly, why we have so many people from California in our student body and it's worth the trip is just the professional opportunities. You know, we just have so many major metropolitan areas here in the Northeast. So could I ask you, you know, really the perspective that you have that's unique to all the programming we're doing this month is, you know, the strength of the Boston College Alumni Network in your view, and how it's maybe impacted your career, and any personal anecdotes you may have to share.
I guess I'll start. So I personally, I feel like I should have utilized the alumni network more, to be honest. It was like, as you get older, you're just like, where are my connections? And what I loved though about BC is as soon as you reach out, I couldn't believe that everyone, number one, remembers who you are to the T. Like, you know, Steve's just like, yeah, you went to Crossroads and blah, 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 like everything about me, my mom, it shows people really care about you. And as soon as that happened, you know, you can always ask people to maybe refer you to someone or put you in the door, but the follow-up that came, like people would follow back up with me to see how you know, certain position worked out, or offer other opportunities maybe I hadn't looked into before. While I was on campus, when I was studying economics too, I had a lot of economics professors too, just talking to me about the future of like the economy, you know, this wealth wave that's coming, and really wanted to know not just what I wanted to do, but who I am, to really make sure those two things are merging. And I hadn't really thought about that, because you're just, what job, what job, what job, not necessarily what value I can bring just to the world around me, which I thought was important. So, I just think when you're making, you know, a college decision, it's so many things. It's the environment. Like for me, I came from LA. I was not about to go to a small town. Something I had to be in a big city, but I wanted to have a true college feel, because I was going to go to NYU actually. And so, but realizing there isn't a campus really NYU, you're just a part of the city. I do think that BC gave the best of both worlds, kind of like what you were saying, Ashley, and you can do a lot on campus. But that being said, I built so many great relationships that did help with my professional career. Almost every job opportunity I got is because someone just put me in the door. And so I think it was a decision, number one, from relationships, networking, but it's also a business decision. And the alumni network really makes sure that you're going to do well, you know, in your next waves of life. And they don't forget about you. So
I have a funny story. And Justin, I'll throw it over to you right after I saw your hand. Yes, professionally awesome. I think the network I think we all underutilize our networks in general. And I didn't really know how to really tap into the alumni network, to be honest. Once I first graduated, I moved out to California, and in my company, literally I go into orientation, and someone in upper management or something, he comes up to me, he's like, "You're Sandy, huh? You're the guy from Boston College?" I'm like, "What? How you?" Like, "Boston College alumni, I don't know, year 60 something." And I'm like, "What?" So I was like, whether I got hired because of that guy or whatever, again, there's the BC alum looking after you. But funny story, like I appreciate you saying, Christine, about like just how the network really is more than just your professional. I think in life as well, people look after each other. I was planning to propose to Ashley in 2015. That's when I proposed. And we were going to Europe, we were going to Paris. And I was like, okay, I got this down. I've never been out there. Let me figure this out. Let me, who do I contact? Who do I know there who got at least capture the picture of my proposal, right? Like, that's all I want. I utilized the BC network for this. I went to LinkedIn for the first time. I'm like, hey, I'm going to propose to my wife. We're both BC alum. Is there anyone living in Paris on this date? You'd be amazed how many responses I got from people who didn't even live there, but knew somebody who lived there and were willing to make the connection, connected with several people.
People that we didn't even know.
People we didn't even know. And it was amazing. I'm like, everyone was just super happy for me and for us. I'm like, everyone wants to know the story. It was awesome. So when you think about the network, I think we just underutilized, even currently, right? You're all high school, whoever's watching and just other networks you're part of is really, BC network is strong. 9,000 undergrad, but you know, they're tight and they're strong. So pretty cool. Just want to add that little story there.
I mean, there's no possible way I could beat that. That's such a like my heart is warmed.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I would just say I've lived a bunch of different cities now. I grew up in LA, I moved to Boston, I lived in New York for a little while, and now I live in Austin, Texas. And I would actually say, both professionally and personally, this most recent move in the last year is where I've actually tapped into the network. I mean, I know nobody here. And so I got into the local alumni chapter and have met a bunch of interesting people. I've met people that I forgot actually went to BC. So there were two people who were close friends who you lose touch with, who were in the state, who have been incredibly welcoming to me personally. And I would also add, you know, I think in the professional world here, Jeff, I'm going to read between the lines, like talk about jobs and like, you know, getting help with that stuff. I look at peers who went to different schools, and I really believe that there is a pedigree in emotional intelligence that you get from BC, and also just a professional ethic that is uncommon. And I'm not here to poo-poo other schools by any means. I've watched my peers from all backgrounds really thrive in a lot of diverse areas, and I really believe that, you know, the network is incredibly helpful, but the network isn't going to be the thing that makes you successful. The network can open the door, but if you're not prepared to walk through it, a network means nothing. And so to me, when I think about professional life and BC and the kind of ethos you walk away from the school with, you're really prepared to walk through that door. And then who opens it for you is a hustle always.
I can give just one quick story. When I was interviewing senior year, I just kind of, maybe I got really lucky, but I walked around the career fair and met a younger BC alum at the first firm I worked at Putnam Investments. She kind of, you know, we hit it off and we kept in touch. And one of the main people who was high up at Putnam was a BC alum, and he had never had a BC grad in the program, this new program that they had created. And that is 100% of the reason why I got my first job. So I think it's very strong. It's obviously very strong in Boston and in New York. And of course, I think there's a ton of BC alums in LA. I just haven't actually been back in a decade and lived there to leverage that. But I've certainly leveraged it in New York, and I certainly leveraged it, continue to leverage it in Boston when I stayed after.
Jeff, I'll just add the last thing about, you know, connections and network that I'll say is, because there's this like thread that runs through each BC class, it really doesn't matter what year you are. There's just something special about that BC bubble, for lack of a better word. When you meet a fellow Eagle, you just both get very excited, particularly when you're on the West Coast, because obviously it's in Boston. There are a lot of folks from the East Coast that went there. So there is this instantaneous kind of bond and appreciation when you meet someone in the alum. So when you reach out, you know, when I was in law school or interviewing for jobs and I needed, you know, maybe they couldn't give me the leg in the door, although I had plenty of those kind of, you know, options, but maybe I just needed someone to do a mock interview with me, or I needed someone to review my resume, or I needed someone to kind of guide me and mentor me through whatever process or transition I was making. They were more than willing to reach out, to help, to follow up. They didn't just kind of, you know, give you the nice first conversation and ghost you, right? They actually stood with you kind of through the test of time. And it was what made the difference, right? It doesn't matter if you have an incredibly large network when no one's there to substantively help you and walk you through. The relationships, they really run deep. And I think that makes all the difference.
Thank you so much, everybody. Something about BC which might make it unique among the schools that the students on this call are deciding between is our Jesuit Catholic identity. So, you know, I think that's distinctive, but not always well understood, right? If you didn't go to a Jesuit high school, and there's only a small amount of those in the country, or you don't have a close family member who's a product of Jesuit education, and that's, you know, the vast majority of our students don't really fall into those categories. So they don't really have a firm understanding of Jesuit education when entering as first-year students. But I do think we graduate a lot of proponents of Jesuit education. So I guess, was it a plus factor when you were looking? Was it just sort of there and it was neutral? And did it impact your college experience and beyond in any way?
I can start on that topic. So for me, I wasn't looking for a Jesuit institution, but the things that I was looking for tended to be at Jesuit schools. So for example, I was very interested in studying abroad and just being able to participate in different service trips. BC, I don't even know how many service opportunities BC offers, both domestically in Boston, outside of Boston, other states, and abroad. And so that was something that really appealed to me, just because, you know, men and women for others, right? That kind of ideal. It runs through when you're there as a freshman, when you are transitioning out, bringing up the lower classmen as you kind of usher them in and pass the torch as you graduate. I mean, just everything, right, in your communities. And so it was huge for me because it kind of allowed me to have those experiences. I went to the Dominican Republic several times. I know you participated in different activities that way, right? And then the idea of, right, Jesuits, the idea is, right, education, right? Bringing a very, very broad perspective, valuing that, and valuing that exploration. And so, you know, everyone talks about it. This is probably true at any school, right? You're going to go in thinking you're going to do one thing and then you go like total 180, right? I went in as a math major and then you couldn't get any further going into philosophy, right? So, but just having kind of the safe space and ability to do that with mentors and guidance was everything for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was neutral going in. I wasn't looking for anything about the Jesuit education that was offered necessarily. I love the campus and I love what I heard about it. I think it impacted in my ability to just be a better person in general. I think as I look back at my history at Boston College, I've made some dumb decisions, some better decisions, but I think because I was in an environment that helped me grow and helped me plug into just different programs and friend groups and things like that helped me just be a better person. I would think that's because it was a Jesuit institution. I don't know, but I had fun, and I think the service, that service heart and that wanting to help others, I think definitely stems from that type of education.
I would jump in here. I would say I was near anti-religious when I started. I was the one who showed up at orientation. It was like, so this is a what now? Like, wait, what? You know, I knew, but you know, in LA, at least my experience is that religion, for the most part, is not something that's discussed a great deal. That was my personal experience with it, and so to have it discussed openly was a little surprising. And what I'll say, and what I took away from it, is that the spirit of questioning is really what I took from that. Questioning all things, questioning faith, questioning people around you, wondering and curiosity. I thought were all really excellent surprises from the spirit of the Jesuit education. I think I was suspicious of the core curriculum and how that tied in. I was suspicious of a religion class where I was like, when's it going to happen? When are you going to try to convince me? And it really never happened. And I would say that the class I took was a comparative study between Christianity and Islam, and I knew nothing about either faith. And that was a tremendous experience for me, really, really eye-opening. Both in terms of how to think about religion myself, how to think about the religion of other people, to think about how sort of deep and core it is, but also how really not different than anyone else I found myself. You know, I joke for the religious here, this will be surprising perhaps, but I remember my first Ash Wednesday at BC, I had to call my roommate who was Catholic and very open about it. And I asked him why people's faces were dirty. I had no idea. And so, you know, and people were so happy to explain and so warm. So I was suspicious, semi-open, and I left really appreciating it. And I'll also say that in my life after BC, I've continued to not be a religious person, but I do think that 4 years at BC has given me a vocabulary and empathy and an ability to talk with people who are, that I think is lacking in a lot of the US right now, personally.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off. I think everybody said it very, very well. The community service is competitive. It's not always easy to get into a program that you want to do, which is super unique and kind of strange at first. And you realize kind of everybody's there, like Sandy and Ashley and Justin and Christine have said, just men and women for others is really ingrained in the academics as well. And as I said in the beginning, I was a philosophy minor, but really more focused on, how other religions thought about life and death. And, I took Buddhism, I took Hinduism, I took the intersection of science and Christianity. I took the life of, Gandhi. I really, got to, there's so many options. You get to kind of pick what you want to do. So I just wanted to learn about all different types of religions and, how that made the culture of each country different, just to be a more well-rounded person. And I ended up, as Ashley said, there's a lot of international opportunity. I ended up going to Vietnam after my freshman year and my senior year. It was through an athletics program, but BC was able to support me in doing that. And I taught volleyball and math. And that was one of the most life-changing experiences I ever had. And I don't know if I would have, as Justin said, had the curiosity maybe to explore a program like that had I not been pushed in the classroom.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. The other thing that I have thought deeply about since I graduated that ties back to Jesuit, the Jesuit foundations is student formation, which is a phrase that you hear all over the place at BC. And one of my favorite things, some of the other panelists have mentioned it, but there's tremendous service opportunities, but I think there's also a real commitment from the faculty to do service for you, the student. And that takes the form of like everyday life, but also really meaningful, I would call them marquee experiences in freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year in the form of orientation, 48 hours, Kairos, other types of experiences where there's these structured opportunities for you to critically look at yourself. And that is really special. And that is something that does not exist at schools that are not Jesuit. I think that there is a common thread in some of those pieces, but I never expected it. I never knew that I would appreciate it. And I really did. And I think about them a lot, even now.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being so authentic. If I had a panel of dry people right now, I wouldn't ask this question because your personalities are coming through so strongly and in such a compelling way. I'm going to ask it. These students on the call, they've made a lot of sacrifices, not just academic sacrifices over the last couple of years, but social sacrifices. And can you give them a pep talk? Some of them are going to Boston College, and others may very well be. What are the events, traditions that you think back on and they make you smile? What do they have to look forward to socially at BC? And as it's already been documented, I'm the oldest one on here, so I'm pretty confident that anything you mentioned still exists here at BC.
Probably, I'll start with that one, because I was so conflicted on where to go when I was done, because I had basketball scholarship offers, some place I got in academically, never been to, the East Coast for an extended period of time. And it was crazy. But BC seemed to have this interesting combination of stuff. And I was like, worst case scenario, I can always transfer. That's how excited I was, right? Like I didn't really know. There wasn't this certainty, but so much stuff made sense. And I started to fall in love with the story of BC as I listened. And Justin, as you were just talking, I was like, just look at us right now. When Jeff, you sent me an email about just being a part of this, I'm like, you don't have to give me a big thing. Sure, of course, because I want to give so much to BC because it gave so much to me. It's just, how could I not? But the spirit of that is just, when you think of it, we already said like you feel like you have like a small school thing going on campus, but you're in a big city. But for me, and I'm biased because I played basketball there, I'm a sports person, but I was like, what I experienced on campus, like that's when the Red Sox finally won the World Series. And I learned all about like the freaking Yankees, this and the curse. And I didn't know what was going on. And coming from Los Angeles, you think you're a sports town because you like the Lakers and Kobe and like the whole thing. But then you go to Boston, you realize what it truly means to be a sports fan. And I was like, this is insane. Like the bars, the craziness, and then the freaking Patriots win, right? Like I was at BC probably the best times ever. It was just like the Patriots and then the Red Sox and then, but BC itself, we had such great sports programs. You felt like you were at a small liberal arts college, like a Vassar or Sarah Lawrence almost, of the people who care and how much people knew you. But then you felt like you were in a huge, big city, even though Justin and I agree, like Boston's more like a town. You can kind of walk it, but you got that feel of the city. But then there was such pride on that BC campus. You know, I know like we made it to the Sweet 16 almost every year that I was there. Football was great. Men's basketball was doing well. I mean, I knew nothing about hockey. I'm at the hockey games, like, yeah, like just crazy screaming. They're making it to the Frozen Four. I mean, no one has a college experience that I describe. Like they either have the campus stuff, but not the sports. Then they have, oh, I could go and do the city. And I used to go to these spoken word things, like if they're in New York, but not this. I mean, I couldn't say more about the experience. I mean, the mods, I swear everybody on the hockey team lived in the mods. I assume you guys still have that. If not, that's
Everybody
heartbreaking.
knows what the mods are.
You gotta explain it. Explain it.
What? The most epic parties you've ever been to in your life. And because athletes aren't allowed to move off campus. So we stay on all 4 years. And so, but everybody who moves off their junior year comes back on anyway. The party with the crazy athletes, especially the crazy hockey players, like they're insane. But just the stuff that would go on in the mods there, certain things that aren't for this panel. But I could never take it back. And it wasn't exclusionary. It wasn't like, oh, the athletes are just in their own corner. And now these people here, like we all interweave in so many different ways. And the stories that we tell, you know, now, just like what happened on campus of the big stuff that happens and everything happens in the city, we bring it on campus. And there's so much pride in the things that go on campus. It's just crazy. So, I mean, I just think it's a lot of fun. And I didn't have high expectations. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a super whitewashed city. Who knows what's going to happen here? And I loved it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So there's just so much to do. I mentioned it earlier, right? So for me, notable things that stood out are like the Boston Marathon runs along campus, and it's this huge day on campus, right? Justin, did you run it?
No, but I cheer really, really hard. That was like my favorite Boston thing that I never thought I would. So yes, that is like.
Yeah,
I like organized events for it senior year, like marathon.
It's an organized event on our campus, right? And it's so much fun. So you have things like that, right? And then I was not a sports fan, even though I have 3 brothers. I feel like that pushed me further away from it. But then when the whole campus comes alive for tailgating, all of a sudden you like football, or any of the basketball games. I mean, just any sports. It builds a community and a culture that way, right? We were on a dance team, and so there's something called Showdown. It's a big kind of competition on campus, which is a big thing. And so that was a huge marker for us. We ended up going back to Boston every year for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
After graduation to go support our fellow like teammates, and other alum would come back to support it because it was such a big deal, and you got to just stay connected that way and have fun that way. And then you have, right, the sun finally comes out and everyone like loses their mind in the spring. And so the campus comes alive that way, and you start having different activities and events there. I mean, there's just so much to do. I mean, you can't even do it all practically. But the one thing I will say that I love about BC, and again about the community, is there are a lot of things geared towards its seniors, right? As you're wrapping up that experience. And so we have a senior week, right? After classes are done, everyone else gets kicked off, and then it's just the seniors left on campus for you to just enjoy each other's company, right? Just have fun, kind of cement those relationships, build memories as you're exiting your college career. And it was just, I mean, so many tears, so much laughter, so many fun memories that way coming out of that. So much.
I have too many memories. You asked that question, Jeff, and I'm like, really? Like, this is too much. I was, I'm not sure how many people on this call are like super active in their high schools. I was like super active in my high school. When I got to college, I did what I think my counselor said not to do, is just get over involved. I was part of everything. I knew every cultural club. I was part of student government. I was doing this, like running these like showdowns and big events on campus by my senior year. I was in RA for a year and a half. I went did all these service events. I took literally, when you talk about taking advantage of your education, yeah, in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, I took advantage of everything. I had a blast. I think if I were to narrow it down, I also worked at Hillside. I had a lot of different communities. So my job, so it was like I had to work as well while I was on campus, and I worked at a cafeteria, which was part of campus, which is separate than where the freshmen live. So I worked there in my freshman year, and my coworkers and that community that I built at Hillside was so strong. So I built this network there. I remember I worked there for 4 years and it was awesome. Great food. So the food at BC is something that
amazing.
I remember
So
as well.
good.
Surprisingly very amazing, comparatively to a lot of other campuses from what I heard. My dancing, obviously this is where I kind of got like really close with Ashley, obviously, and us obviously being married. So that's a huge part of my experience. And then my roommates. I never lived on my own, and kind of like it's my first time away from home, and just like the relationships I built with my roommates through the 4 years, the ups and downs, what we had to navigate. It was just very unique, a very unique time to have in your life that you don't really get back. Yeah, typically, right? Like it's like everything's provided for you in this small space, and you're with roommates who you kind of know, you're getting to know, but you have to do life as well and study. It's like, I don't know. It was like, it's so awesome. And obviously the nightlife of the weekends, I played hard, studied hard, made it all work out, and I had friends to back me up and really support me. So.
I'll add one tradition that I really like that obviously came about recently is the red bandana run. Wells Crowther, and you guys will know when you go to BC, because each sports team actually dedicates a game to them. There's the red bandana game for football. Volleyball has it. I'm sure basketball has it as well. And Wells Crowther actually graduated BC. Jeff, I'm forgetting when it was, but he ran back into the burning buildings of the two Twin Towers on September 11th and saved probably hundreds of people. And he did not make it. So the family, there's a run that's dedicated to honoring him and honoring the pretty much exactly what BC teaches you to be men and women for others. So that's a really special event that's very unique to BC and a very inspiring story. ESPN actually did a segment on it, if any of you want to check that out. And then of course, Marathon Monday is my absolute favorite. Very hard to explain. But I was also there during the Boston bombing, and I had a lot of friends that I was cheering on that were running. So it definitely holds a special place in my heart because, you see, all of your friends training for pretty much the whole year. And then to go through that experience, the whole school was shut down, was definitely a horrible, incident. But BC is right on mile 21. So everyone runs through essentially the campus, and it is just the most fun. That's probably my favorite tradition that we have.
I'm saying one more thing. We're all talking on this one. First, Sandy and Ashley have given you only just a taste of what Showdown is on the BC campus. Like national championship winning hockey teams don't fill arenas like the Showdown does every year. Like unbelievable. Like incredible. I remember watching you two. Like I remember seeing you, Sandy, at Hillside. Like you were everywhere, man. Like everywhere, including student government. It's nice to see you. But I'll actually take it away from BC, and I'll just say, like, spirit of the pep talk, you're probably in at lots of different great schools. You're probably doing the pro-con list because that's what someone suggested, an adult in your life said, do the pros and cons. And like, really, if you're considering BC, if you're considering other schools at this caliber, it's not going to come down to the pro-con list unless you really want to study something specialized, which is fair. This is a gut instinct decision. And this is one of the first major decisions you're going to make in your life on your own that's going to set you on a trajectory. I think about the metaphor of an airplane taking off, and these little degrees of change when you first take off can make massive impacts on your life and your destination. And I would just say, trust your gut, whether it's BC or not, that's okay. But if you come to BC, you're going to be surrounded by other people who felt that itch, who knew that this was a place that they wanted to take a chance on. And it's going to be a place that takes its chance on you. So clear eyes, full hearts can't lose, couldn't resist. That's a reference that none of you will probably understand.
Austin's rubbing off on you already, Justin.
Texas, I had to. You said pep talk.
Right, that's good. Let's close with this. Do you have any advice for students as far as getting the most out of college, or misconceptions you had about college, or even the transition to career, or if you don't have any advice, if you want to offer a final comment, please feel free.
I guess I'll start. I'll be brief. I would say my advice, I'm assuming most of the people on this call are from Southern California, right, or the West Coast. And so if you're considering going to Boston, you're already considering kind of stepping outside your comfort zone likely. And I think my one piece of advice is I think college is a very safe time, particularly at BC, right? I can't speak for other institutions, but BC has so many structures in place. It's a safe time in your life to fail, to try new things, right? To meet new people, to travel, to just push yourself, knowing that you have a structure and a space that's there to kind of help you navigate that journey. And my one piece of advice would be kind of like a Sandy, right? Get involved, try things you would have never done. Because I think my first year and a little into my second, I was a little bit more narrow-minded and just trying to do what I knew, what I was comfortable with. And you miss out on this huge breadth of experience and kind of life change, right? And perspective that you can gain. And so go study abroad. I studied abroad in Madrid, Spain. Every single person I know who has graduated from any college who did not study abroad regrets it. And so, right, exactly. So make it happen, right? Figure a way to make that happen, because it will be just an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, I'll add to just making sure that you make connections while you're there. I think, especially if you're even on this call, I mean, you're excelling academically, you're outperforming a lot of your peers. If you're thinking about the larger Los Angeles, so you're doing great already. When you get to college, it's easy to just focus on your books and get the academics done, and then 4 years pass by and you didn't make any meaningful relationships. I know we all talked about relationships we got out of BC. I think that's huge, but I know some people as well that didn't do that while they were at BC. So I think as you go into BC, just piggybacking what she said, is just get involved, get out of your comfort zone, practice that. You can practice that now. I know that your senior year hasn't been traditional, right? Most of you have been at home, virtual. And I know there's schools that are opening up this last month or so, and we don't know what that might look like. But if there's experiences that you missed out in high school that you want to get back, BC provides so many ways to relive a lot of like those community-oriented traditions and like moments that you may be missing in your high school right now. And it's hard to say, but like I know it's tough. But BC offers so much, and I think about that when you're making your college decision. But yeah, so I just want to add that on.
Kelly, Christine, you're good?
I'll say one quick thing, kind of piggybacking off of Ashley. If you are thinking about a challenge and pushing yourself, this is the time to do it. I love California more than most people, I would say. And, a volleyball player from Southern California in LA going to Boston, where nobody cares about volleyball. They did by the end of my time there, but was a huge challenge. And I am a much better person. I'm a much better leader for having gone through that experience. I've created so many relationships across the country in my job. Justin, I travel to Texas a lot, so maybe I'll email you. But
Yeah.
I pretty much have a friend no matter where I go for work. I have a friend in almost every state that I go. And I think that is so unique. If I had stayed in California, I can guarantee I would not be who I am today. And whether it's BC or a school that's in the South or on the East Coast or somewhere else, I really, really believe that leaving California and leaving the West Coast just makes you understand the country and the world a lot better.
I don't have anything to add. This was an incredibly thoughtful group of answers, but I think if I was going to emphasize anything, it's that leaving your comfort zone and leaving LA is the best thing you can do for your perspective. It's really the only thing you can do to fundamentally change your perspective. So I would say do it.
Yeah, I was thinking too, like, what else can I add to that? I think those are great. I mean, associations was one of the main things I was going to say, but to be different, I would say is be creative also. Don't try and stick to the norm. I think our society, you see how sometimes there's something that comes in that disrupts, an old antiquated industry like a Netflix, right? Or Uber and lifted to like the transportation industry. What I loved most, well, not most, but one of the great things I loved about Boston College is that it helped teach you how to think. I think Justin did a really good job really articulating the whole theology and studying that. And I mean, what appealed to me of Brown was that you can create your own major. You don't have to take all of this stuff like Boston College makes you do. But I'm so happy I did because I was so much more well-rounded. But when you start to learn about the establishment or how things have been, allow yourself to think bigger and brighter of like, is this always how it has to be? And as opposed to just like, what do I want to be kind of when I grow up, or, again, so fixated in one direction, a lot of times it's just focusing in on what are the challenges or concerns in the world that I would love to fix or contribute to if they're good things, like enhance. Sometimes we just have to take a broader look at how we see the world around us and not trying to go into a box that has typically been made for us. And I think that Boston College has a great environment to allow you to do that, and a lot of great people and resources to keep challenging you in the way that you think so that you can just be a better version of yourself.
Well, Christine, Kelly, Ashley, Sandy, Justin, thank you so much. You made this a conversation, and it was enjoyable to listen to, and I'm sure it was very helpful to the students and families that tuned in. Hopefully the students on the call enjoy high school and will be proud graduates of their high schools for the rest of their lives, but sadly that isn't the case for every student. I think you have a better shot at college, and boy, what a great thing for the rest of your life to, as you said, Christine, be willing to drop everything and join us on Zoom for this panel when the novelty is clearly worn off after a year. But we're glad that we were all of your college choices, and thank you just so much for your generosity and caring enough about BC to support us in what continues to be in an unusual enrollment cycle. For the students and families that are joining us still, you'll consider the programming that's happening for the rest of the month. We mailed you a postcard that you might have, so you can track the events that are happening, and then you also get weekly emails, so look out for those. It's not easy learning about schools virtually, but thanks for your effort in trying to do so. Great seeing everybody again. Thank you so much for your time. Best wishes to the panel and the entire audience. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.